Hi there. This year it's official. I've lived half of my life in Cary, North Carolina. I keep wondering if I can say that I'm actually from Cary at this point. I feel like it as I've watched the town and surrounding areas grow over the past 25 years, in fact. And through these years and my journey to the sixth grade classroom I find myself in today, I've planted little seeds throughout this town, creating my own canopy of learners in our community. Prior to moving to the area, the seeds of education had been planted with me pursuing and graduating with a degree in elementary education from Central Michigan University. I'd worked a few years in Michigan, then a year in Chapel Hill before scoring the perfect job as a math and science teacher in 5th grade at Davis Drive Elementary. Little did I know that this job would lay the roots of my future life as an educator. I love teaching those subject areas, especially math, because students have varying degrees of feelings towards math. I wanted to create an environment where all students loved math, or at the very least liked it a little. As my confidence as an educator grew, so did my students in their abilities and their own self-esteem. Receiving letters from parents like these helped me see that growing the student in math went far beyond their test scores. A great teacher was one that could encourage learners to achieve to their highest abilities. I was young then, newly married, no kids of my own, but I knew these kids needed a little support if they were truly going to blossom. My experience was limited then, but I had an idea of what I needed to focus on, the whole child. As it happens, my family started to grow and I took some time away from the classroom. I was a full-time mom and then as my own 2 children finished preschool, became a preschool teacher myself. My experience there, watching those little ones grow, from clingy 3-year-olds to boisterous 4-year-olds, guiding them in the tasks of life like putting on a coat or sharing snacks or singing the Days of the Week song, reminded me how every small task is a lesson in the making. I love to watch them leave their parents, moms and dads smiling or tearing up. As a mom myself, I knew that feeling, and as a teacher, the experience reminded me that every little one is someone's pride and joy. Someone loves them more than anything else in the world. And that while sometimes these little ones needed some guidance, they were truly loved, flaws and all. And those flaws were what made each of them special. I spent my free time volunteering in the schools, eventually leaving my preschool classroom behind to be a full-time volunteer for my children's elementary school. I supported the teachers any way I could, from tutoring in the classroom to making copies to organizing lunches and snacks as the staff appreciation chair for the PTSA. I met some amazing teachers along the way, creative, talented, and was especially impressed with the ones that took the time to really get to know my children. I also volunteered outside the schools, and in looking back realized that I was drawn to activities that involved working with kids. I was a Girl Scout leader for my daughter's troop for several years. I also taught church class for both of my children through their confirmation years at St. Michael's. I loved creating lessons that would engage the students, especially when many of them would have preferred to still be sleeping on Sunday mornings. Every 5 years, my teaching certificate would come up for renewal. I spent hours taking online classes so that I could renew without letting it lapse. For several years, while my babies were babies, I took classes at NC State to explore a degree in school counseling. The classes were fascinating, allowing me to explore the side of the classroom I enjoyed the most, understanding the people right in front of me, my students, my peers, and the families that I was supporting. It was through my multiculturalism class that I experienced the Cary Diwali Festival for the first time. What an experience taking me inside the culture of my students, a population that has grown so much in Cary, just like the town itself. Through these experiences, I blossomed even more, sprouting new confidence and knowledge to help guide me on a path back to the classroom. As my son finished 8th grade, I stepped in as the receptionist at Mills Park Middle School. I had just passed the Praxis for middle school math, no small feat by the way. I applied and interviewed at 2 schools for math positions, but with no classroom experience for 15 years, administrators were leery. I totally understood. It was disheartening, but I knew if I could get into the schools and show my gifts and talents, I would find my way back as a teacher. From the reception desk, I was able to build relationships with so many members of the school community. Those who frequented the front office were often the frequently late students or students meeting with administration for discipline reasons. I greeted every child with a smile, my philosophy being that the first person you see can set the mood for the whole day. The front office is a crazy place. Phones, doorbells, sick kids, administrators, but I always made sure that whoever was in front of me knew that I was listening only to them. I built some unlikely relationships this way, and I do believe that some students were purposely late for school just so that we could greet one another. Each year, one administrator in particular would ask if I was ready to go back to teaching, and each year I would say, not yet, until this year. What made me realize it was time after almost 20 years? Well, first, my license is up for renewal this summer. I thought if I'm going to renew, I need to go for it and actually teach. Second, my own children are both off to college, and I know I can commit the time, especially knowing how much thought I put into my work. I knew up until now that something would suffer, and I would never want that to be my students or my own family. And most of all, the perfect opportunity came up at the perfect time. I settled into my 6th grade math classroom just 2 weeks before the start of the school year. Without a lot of time to organize, my classroom was fairly bare and my worries were many. I wondered if I would know this new math. I wondered if I could keep up with the meetings, the parents, and my 125 students. And I wondered if my students would blossom. And guess what? All of these things are happening and more. I take one day at a time, especially when it comes to planning, but I have worked hard to build a community with my students and their parents. My heart fills with happiness when I receive these notes, especially from one student whose confidence has flourished along with her smile and her newfound love of math. One child at a time, building a community of learners in a town that I have lived in and loved for over 20 years.